So, Andrew Weissmann, I don't know that I would have put on the bingo card asking you if you agree with John Yoo, but that's exactly what I'm going to do. He said this: Trump is not allowed to have the records and keep them. He can get copies, but he can't keep them away from the archives. That is settled. John Yoo told NBC News in an interview with the National Conservatism Conference. It's not whether Trump violated the law. He did. It's not whether the government had legal grounds for the search warrant. It does. The question really is whether he could be charged. And the real issue I think people on both sides should recognize is it a good use of prosecutorial discretion to charge him? My view has been if you're going to go after a president for the first time in history for violating law, it should be something more important than this, like being involved with the January 6th conspiracy. Oh, John Yoo, give us a minute, right? Andrew Weissmann, we now have Bill Barr, and I'm going to play Chris Christie, too. We have Bill Barr. These are not Republicans who saw Trump for the threat that he was. These are far right-wing Republicans. This is Bill Barr, Chris Christie, John Yoo saying he broke the law and he can be charged.
Yeah, I also, so look, I agree with a lot of that statement. I don't agree with the part that is, you know, if you're going to charge a former president, it has to be something really serious like the January 6th conspiracy. Obviously, that is really, a really serious crime. That is overthrowing a democratic election. It's hard to see something more serious than that. But here's the thing. Donald Trump is a civilian. He may be a former president. He is a person like all of us on TV right now talking to you. If we break the law, we should be held to account. There are many junior people who work in the intelligence community, who work in law enforcement, who get prosecuted for doing much less than what the former president did in Mar-a-Lago. So this idea that it's like, oh, you know what, he's kind of above the law is really, I think, just wrong-headed. I mean, either we have a system where we are all accountable to the law or we don't. And I have to say, the statement that you read, and is page 1 of Trump's brief, which is this is a mere storage dispute, is preposterous. My analogy is to, Willie Sutton saying, the fact that you found, my proceeds in my home, that's a mere storage dispute that I'm keeping, my bank robbery proceeds at home instead of at the bank. I mean, this is preposterous for the former president. I mean, to me, the filings, I think, make it very clear that there's not much of a defense if he is charged.
Well, Andrew Weissmann, it also makes clear that they don't have any evidence that Trump declassified anything.
Yeah, well, as you pointed out, they go up to the line, but they don't quite cross it and say he declassified it. And the reason is that you can be charged with lying to a judge. That's 18 U.S.C. 1001 if you make that false statement. And this is where as Asha knows and Claire knows, any normal judge would bring the parties in and they'd say, what are you saying? Are you saying that you declassified it? And if so, where's the affidavit to prove that? This is, you don't just get to make allegations in a brief. You're supposed to actually put some evidence on as to what happened. And, I don't think that's what this judge will do. She doesn't seem terribly experienced. But in a normal court of law, you don't get to just say this in a brief and not have any evidence to back it up.
And Andrew Weissmann, just for anyone, I think viewers of this program know who John Yoo is, but he's the architect of all the legal memos, arguing for, among other things, the legal architecture for extraordinary steps taken during the global war on terror. And he made those comments at the Conservatism Conference. It is interesting to me that Bill Barr and John Yoo and Chris Christie are speaking publicly for another day, a day perhaps in which they will be, and I hate to describe it, he's people of being capable of being embarrassed or ashamed, but the way they're speaking suggests that they want to cleave themselves away from arguing that the government doesn't have the right to charge and prosecute a former president for this conduct. They just want to narrow it down to prosecutorial discretion. Is that how you read John Yoo's comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. But it's also really interesting that he is willing to say the January 6th material would be an appropriate use of discretion. And so, I think as you've mentioned, and this is really outside of my bailiwick, but as a political matter, it is very useful to have people like Bill Barr, John Yoo, Liz Cheney. I mean, people who, a minute and 32 seconds ago, all of us would be describing as hardcore Republicans, distancing themselves from what Donald Trump has been doing, both at Mar-a-Lago and in terms of trying to overthrow the presidential election. So
in that vein, Asha, here's Chris Christie annihilating the executive privilege claim that Judge Eileen Cannon saw. I'm not even sure that in their first go-around, Trump argued this. Here it is.
I think the Justice Department's chances are pretty good. And I think they are because their main thrust is that some of these may be covered by executive privilege. Well, there's only one executive who can assert the privilege, and that's the one who is the current executive, Joe Biden. A previous executive can't assert his executive privilege. You're not the executive any longer. Biden will not assert executive privilege over these documents. And I think the idea that some of these documents are somehow attorney-client privilege is going to be a bit of a reach. And I think they're going to have to show, in some respect, they have a good faith basis to make that claim.
So, Asha, again, when you have the likes of Bill Barr and John Yoo and Chris Christie annihilating your lame legal arguments as lame, where do you go next?
Yeah, I would probably not be so generous to say that they care so much about prosecution. I think that this really gets to the underlying legal theory that people like John Yoo and Bill Barr have been promulgating for several decades now, which is the unitary executive, which was articulated just now by Chris Christie, that all executive power rests in the president. This has justified so many actions and assertions of presidential power that what Trump is actually claiming undercuts that. It is slicing and dicing up the executive branch where they can be at cross purposes and all diced up, and even a former president can assert a claim against it. So I think that what they're trying to do is preserve this conservative legal theory, which gives the president expansive power, more so than trying to, protect or trying to turn against Trump specifically. It's just an absurd legal argument. And I agree that it's not going to hold up in court because you have proponents of that unitary executive throughout the conservative judiciary. Unfortunately, maybe Aileen Cannon is not well versed on that, but I think that the Department of Justice has a good claim to make moving forward.